So nobody knows. Why take chances? Why not do what you can do that would ensure that at least most parties, if not all parties, are protected at the end of the day?
Okay, so why was government money not put into Intercontinental and the rest of them?
Well,
these are the issues. You see, when you do a public policy, you do it in a very consistent manner so that people don't begin to insinuate. I'm not saying the CBN is working to an answer. That's not for me because I don't have evidence to support that. But what is important is that when you do a reform, it's supposed to be a global thing and say this is what we want to do, and you set the objectives. Who do you want to protect? The shareholders, not the shareholders, the depositors, and other stakeholders. Government monies were put in banks elsewhere. Now, what is the guarantee that these banks that have signed TIA are going to eventually succeed in getting this deal through? The shareholders are still going to come in the way because their approval will constitute almost 80% of everything you are doing. And when you go to them to get those TIAs approved finally, and it will go to court for sanction, and what if they fall through? Are we going to now come back and nationalize them? How many banks are we going to nationalize in this process? If you want to nationalize, let us agree that it's a policy we want to do. Let's not make the reform look as if it is just intended to ensure that we sell these banks to whoever. I don't know.
So you think it was a hasty decision on the part of the central bank? I mean, it all happened in 48 hours. That's the most interesting thing about this. And 1 minute the banks were handed over to Bridge banks for 24 hours. They were taken over by Amcon. And then a few hours
all of a sudden, the licenses have been issued to the new banks, and then meanwhile the capital has not.
There's no stipulated time that says, within this period of time, this is how long this process should take, and this is how long that process should take. So are you against the speed at which it all happened?
I think I have to refer to the Central Bank of Nigeria. But the truth of the matter is, we had the problem in the banking system. The CBN has taken some actions. Were those actions the right actions? Time will tell.
Okay.
But the truth of the matter is, there was no compelling reason for the CBN to move that hastily and begin to take over the banks, do bridge banks, and then almost immediately transform them to another bank.
Now, there are also fears that some of these interbank funds that some of the banks had with these banks were going to be withdrawn. It's not a problem. What
is interbank funds? The interbank funds are things of confidence. The other banks have lent money to these banks on the strength of the CBN guarantee.
If they were also not confident that these banks would not meet the September 30 deadline, they had it, of course, they had the right to pull out their funds. And what would have become of
Who is saying they will not meet the September 30 deadline? Who is going to pull the trigger? Is it not the central bank? The central bank was the one that pulled the trigger in how many days' time? Let's say September 30th was a deadline set by the CBN. So if there is anxiety in the market, it is also the CBN that has created that anxiety about all those interbank funds. The truth of the matter is, whatever money has been put in the banks today will not solve their problems entirely. And by December, the CBN may still find itself having to guarantee some of their interbank activities.
Is that how you see all of this playing out in the medium?
I don't see this as a permanent solution to what we have on the ground.
Or is it enough to at least prevent the systemic, to ensure financial stability at this point?
Let me tell you something. The situation before the announcement of CBN on Friday was not that there. I mean, it was not something that was going to cause a collapse. That is the truth. The truth of the matter is that the banks were substantially stable as of Friday. Depositors were not running on them. The anxiety was just from the interbank market. What will happen to these guys? And then there's a CBN guarantee. As long as the CBN guarantees you, nobody is going to disturb you.
Yeah, but it's costing a lot to guarantee these banks.
Is it not costing more? Is it not costing more now that the CBN has put almost 600 and something billion into the banks? Is that not physical cash out? Now, the interbank funds that they have, CBN is now putting its own money in addition as a shareholder now, not even as a lender. There's already some money there that they are owing CBN already. Now, CBN is also a shareholder. No, let's say Amcon, but Amcon is owned by CBN anyway. So we are looking at the cost of the reforms, and we are saying if we are stay where we were before and give them more time to get investors and carry the shareholders along so that all these roadblocks are not on the way, would we have managed it better at a more cost-effective option? That is my worry. Now we have put more money, right? The shareholders have lost out. I mind the Intercontinental Bank, PHB is not only about Atuchi and Akingbola. There are plenty people. In fact, I'm sure PHP will have up to 1 million shareholders. These are Nigerians.
But the courts have been the courts have been a bit silent or talking about the litigations over the.
That is a court of first instance.
It's we've not heard anything. Any.
No, the court might say the CBN has the right to do what it did initially, but people have the right to appeal. Are we sure the courts will not even, when people challenge this in court, are we very certain that the court will not reverse all these things that happened over the weekend? We don't know. So that's why when you want to implement a reform, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you'll be bogged down with litigations. I'm not sure, I may be wrong, but I'm not sure that a lot of shareholders are just going to sit back and say, okay, I've lost my investment, so what? Because the truth is, when the CBN took over these banks, the shareholders were not in charge. When a bank is distressed and you are trying to resolve it, what must happen is the shareholders must be able to put a management in place that will be more committed. It's their bank. They want to do everything possible to turn it around, to stabilize it, and even go ahead to get more partners who will bring in fresh capital so that their banks can survive. But these banks were managed by CBN people. They were not shareholders in the banks. I know CBN tried to get people to buy them, but okay. Maybe I'm too critical of I'm being too critical of CBN's position. But the truth of the matter is, this has been expensive with the new injection of money. The deadline that we set, that was September 30th, that put CBN in a position to take this decision, was CBN's deadline itself.
Okay.
So it could have adjusted itself and put itself in a position to avoid this incremental injection. Okay. And then these 3 years that the CBN has said it will wait for to sell these banks, it could have waited for that.
Okay. Wally, I'm sorry, we're completely out of time at this point, but it's a developing story, and of course...
No, it's a developing story. I'm sure a lot of things will happen today, tomorrow,
Okay, hopefully we'll have you back on the program not too long from now. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Wale Oluwo, an analyst, financial analyst from BGL Group. The Asset Management Company of Nigeria, AMCON, will issue bonds worth 678.5 billion naira today for the 3 new banks. Now, we're completely out of time. Now, this is how we'll round up today's edition of Business Morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Esther Ugbodaga. Channel's news track is at 11. Bye for now.